Hi, my name is Chaida. I am a Black conservative podcaster and writer, and this is Her America. Welcome back. And if you are new here, my name is Chaida, and I created This is Her America, where I discuss relevant issues surrounding people, culture, society, and politics. I've also started this series called Foster Stories. When I was a kid, I was in the foster care system. I grew up in the foster care system in the state of Maryland. And I created this series to share my story and how it impacted the woman I am today. This series is available on my podcast and YouTube channel. I share stories that have happened to me as well as other foster kids across the country. In conducting fostered stories, I hope to be creating awareness to issues in the American foster care system. I would like to first start off with a scripture. In this passage, it's in James 1, verse 19. It says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everybody should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." There are plenty of scripture in the Bible that Jesus talks about that is relevant to being quick to listen and slow to anger and slow to speak. So that way you don't become it's so easy to become angry in an instant. But when you take time to step back and listen and hear other perspectives, you can somehow feel elevated, and you feel like this whole weight just lifted off of you. I wanted to talk about the time I went back to my maternal aunt after spending years in the foster care system. I went over my whole journey in the system in a previous episode, My Fostered Life Story. And if you want to listen to that episode, I'll share it in the description. And if you would like to know more about why I am the way that I am, you can follow me on any of my social media platforms that are available, that the links are available in the show's description. The foster home that I was in before returning back to my maternal aunt was hell. It was hell. My former foster mother was extremely abusive towards me, both emotionally and verbally. During this time in her home, I was having very severe mental health issues. I needed help, and part of getting that help was being put on medication. My foster parent at the time, let's just say that there was a huge stigma in the home when it came to mental health, therapy, medication is for mental disorders, and my foster mom made it a point to criticize me taking medication, she would also like highlight how this medication could lead me to having thoughts to unalive myself. And she did that because she tried to spook me. She tried to make it a point that I am crazy and I that I don't need this medication. And so there was so many instances where I felt that I could unalive myself while being in her home because I was that severely depressed. And if anyone ever feels that depressed, if anyone ever feels like they could unalive themselves, I want you to know that you are not alone. Despite how it feels, you are not alone. And there are resources that can help you. And I will be sure to share those resources in the show's description so that way you can get the help that you need and deserve, because you deserve to feel heard, and you deserve to feel like you're worth it, because you are. And when I was placed in my maternal aunt's home again, I felt so beaten down and so out of place that I wanted to just crawl up in a fetus position and die. Recently, I just looked through some former foster care files that I had, and I started reading the details that were shared in the courtroom during the time I was in the system. And I read those files and I thought to myself, that's very interesting, knowing that there were different perspectives being shared. And I also looked through the files that were written by my former CASA, which is court appointed special advocate. And it's just so interesting when you're looking back at the files that basically describe my life. It's very easy it was very easy for me to just feel angry and to scream. But I have to know at the end of the day that these were adults, whether they did their best to protect me or not, were the adults that made the decisions. And they made the decision at the time because they thought that was best for me, even if it wasn't. I also want to highlight in a part in the foster care system that I think people should know. Whenever there's a kid in the system, the goal is for them to be reunified with their biological family, if that is possible. Sometimes reunification isn't the best or possible result if a kid gets removed out of the home. And so they look towards having the kid be adopted. That's one way. Or another way, guardianship, where a foster parent can become a legal guardian of a child until they turn 18 years of age. Another way that a kid can arrange for where there can be more arrangement for a kid that is being placed in the system is called this APLA, which is another planned permanent living arrangement, which means stay in a foster home or a group home until you are an adult. And there is also custody and guardianship to a non-relative, which I explained before, a kid being under guardianship of an adult who is not their relative. I think this was the path that was made for me after being removed from my third foster home. In the documents that I've kept over the years, it stated that I, as a kid, no longer wished to be adopted. And I'm not sure if how I felt at the time. When I was younger, I wished to be adopted in the system. When I was in the system, I wished to be adopted. But over the years, my heart became very broken, and I didn't know if being adopted was possible for me. And after being through a third foster home with a very abusive foster parent, I just said goodbye to that dream. So I guess that's not a complete lie, but I guess it doesn't highlight where I was coming from. Anyways, after being with an emotionally abusive foster mom, I was back with my aunt and uncle. My aunt and my former foster mom had built a some kind of acquaintance when I was in the system, because my aunt got in touch with my foster mom got in touch with my aunt, and they were basically talking about me behind my back, and they were sharing issues that they had about me. And it made me feel small. It made me feel like I didn't matter. It made me want it to be invisible. And I was very hurt by my aunt for doing that, because it made me feel like she only cared about my former foster mom, that my former foster mom could not do anything wrong in her eyes. So when I went back to my aunt and uncle, I felt that most of the parenting was fine. However, they were at their wits' ends when it came to raising me, because they were older and they have already had a child. They have already raised their child, who is my cousin. And at the time, she was in college, away in college. And so it became just me and them. I felt that if I had it any other way, I would have been more of an advocate to myself and for myself. And I would have talked to the social worker that my former foster mom was emotionally and verbally abusive towards me. And I should have never been placed back with my maternal aunt and uncle because of the history. This maternal aunt I went back to was the same maternal aunt that let me go when I was a little kid, and I went back and went into the foster care system. So she was the same maternal aunt that let me go and let me be in the foster care system. And there were tensions between her and my biological mother, that were just that severed their relationships. And even to this day, they still have most likely a non-existent relationship due to the fact that my aunt took me in as a kid before I went to the foster care system, and that my mom didn't like that my aunt did that. So when I went into the system, that was my aunt creating a barrier between me, her, and my mom. And when I went back into that home years later, my aunt still couldn't protect me from my biological mom and her mans. I'm sharing all this because I wanted to highlight that reunification isn't better. For a lot of the times, when a kid goes into the system because a parent failed to do X, Y, and Z, or something happened, a lot of times parents will do everything they can to get their kids back. But when they don't, it's time to resort to other options. And I wished that my social worker fought harder. I wish that I could have fought harder for the things that matter to me. And maybe if I were adopted, I wouldn't have to face all the debacles that came with the life of growing up and through the foster care system until the age of 21 and thereafter. So that's what I want for people to learn from this particular journey in my life, is that reunification isn't better. Sometimes going back to a family that deserted you isn't always better. Even when I was with my aunt, she would always tell me that I should just be with my mom because she's my mom, despite her issues. And that wasn't better for me. So, thank you. Thank you so much for listening. If you have made it to this very end of the episode, thank you so much. If you are new to this show, to this podcast, please consider following and liking and like this episode and leave a comment. If you are watching this on YouTube, then listening to this on YouTube, please consider subscribing and like the button and leave a comment as well. If you are a returning guest to my show, to my podcast, thank you so much for your continuous support. If you'd like to get more insight into my life, you can follow me on any of my social media platforms. The links will be shared in the show's description. Until next time, have a lovely day.